Good evening. I'm not where I'm usually sitting or working. I've been plowing through some circuit diagrams and trying to get my head around some of the Arduino nonsense. And I thought I'd just quickly talk about some of the differences between DC and DCC. Now, this is dirt basics for most of you, but here's the thing. You can turn the volume down, just watch the trains go by. What I'll do is try and illustrate some of the things I'm talking about. And the other thing I'll do is try and explain why I think people struggle with both systems. Come on, let's start with some dirt basics. Almost all model trains run with a DC motor hiding inside them. Now, before you start getting into live steam and all that stuff, just go with me. Little DC motor, when the motor turns, it goes through a gear chain and the train will go along. If you put a plus on one side and a minus on the other, so a battery or whatever you're using, a transformer and a little controller, the train will go along. If you reverse the polarity, so you put the minus on the plus side and the plus on the minus side, the train goes backwards. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So why don't we just use that? We used it for decades. When I was a kid, DCC hadn't been thought of. So why all this thing about DCC? Well, it wouldn't have caught on if there weren't some advantages, and it wouldn't be around if it weren't interesting, at least. Some of the drawbacks of DC. Let's start there. You want the train to go slowly. The way you do that is by reducing the volts. Now, they got clever later and they chopped up the power supply and they kept the volts high, and there's all sorts of clever things they can do, but ultimately what you're doing is reducing the volts that go to the rails, that go to the motor, and that makes the motor turn less quickly. I know it's not quite as simple as that these days, but that's what you're doing. Somebody somewhere along the line figured out that you could keep the volts at, let's say, 12 or 15 volts, 12 volts, and turn it on and off really, really, really quickly. And so you're actually dig, 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 dig. It's going on and off, and the motor goes. But actually, that smooths out for a number of reasons, and so the train will go along slower, even though the volts are still the same, even though they're turning on and off. Then somebody thought, why don't we send those pulses in a particular pattern that the locomotive remembers or can recognize? Wouldn't that be clever? And that's really where the evolution of digital control started. And then somebody thought, you know what? If we move all of that stuff into a tiny little blob and stick it in the train itself, would that work? Oh my. So really, all DCC is very clever nonsense that you put inside a locomotive that converts whatever you're sending at it back into DC to drive the motor with a DC signal. So why bother? And there are some advantages, though. So the big advantages of DCC over DC, these are a few. The first is you can park two trains on the same track. You can do that with DC too, but in DC you have to cut the rail and put a little gap in it and have a little switch. So you cut the rail, put a switch across it, drive the first train in, throw the switch. Now there's no electricity getting to the first train. Now you can drive another one up beside it or up behind it. With DCC, you can park another one, or you can change your mind, or you can park one over the gap. It doesn't matter. There's no rules anymore. So parking trains on the same track. That's one thing. Driving trains together, so double heading, you can do it with DC. You just hook them together. And I remember as a kid where the live chassis were a thing, and you had the couplings screwed straight into the chassis. And then when you joined two little engines together, you had one of them the wrong way round, the chassis would touch through the couplings and you get sparks and nothing would work. I remember all that. But with DC, it's much more difficult to run a double header unless you take the motor out, which is what I used to do. Take one of the motors out, hook the trains together. One locomotive pulls the other one. It looks like a double header. What's the problem? Another problem, lighting. So as the train gets faster, the lights in the carriages or wherever, or if it's a diesel, the lights in the cab or on the front get brighter. And if you stop the train at the station, all the lights go out. That's not very realistic, is it? Well, it was when I was a kid. We had carriages with dynamos, and when the train stops, so did if the batteries weren't charged, so did the lights. But lighting then is much more realistic with DCC. What other benefits are there? Automation. Well, with DCC, you can run automation. I still do it. I have a little shuttle and it chugs off in one direction, runs over a little gap. The locomotive stops. After a few seconds, goes back the other way. Dead simple, just a reversing relay and a little timer circuit. So why do you need DCC to do that? But there's all sorts of additional things you can do with DCC. Now, smooth running and slow running, another big deal with DC versus DCC. DC has a tendency to galvanize. So without getting into real hard physics here, electrons flow from one leg to another. And I'm not even going to say which one to which because there's an argument about that. But they do, and they take with them stuff, and it deposits on one side. So if you're going to galvanize something, that's how you do it. You put a one terminal of the galvanic bath has one polarity, and the other has another. And the electrons flow from one place to another, taking with it whatever the electrode is made of. And that's your rails and your wheels and all that good stuff. So they can really get nasty dirty with DC. You mean you don't get dirty rails with DCC? Well, of course you do. But there is that tendency more with DC. Just clean your track. So what's the problem? Sound. Well, you've seen me using sound. Little sound cards that hide under the track in vital places. So there's one under the street organ that runs for 4 minutes. You remember, every time I go near it. You can run steam sounds, or you remember that? I still haven't given that away. I'm waiting for somebody to say, hey, I want that. But you can make steam sounds, or you can make station announcements. I'm going to get to that eventually. As the train goes by, it triggers something. So you don't need digital anything to do that. I mean, we used to do it with cassette tapes on a loop. Do you remember those? But it's so much easier with DCC. It just is. You can put speakers inside the trains. Now, I think to some extent it's a little gimmicky. I've got several trains that do have onboard sound. One of the 2 Tornadoes I have has sound. It's actually kind of fun because every time you power the layout up, if that's in its parking spot, it comes on and starts hissing at you. The Class 20 has sound, quite good sound, and that I think is worthwhile. One of the EMUs has sound. I think I've thought about that long and hard. I don't think there's really any benefit to the sound on that unit whilst it's running, because the wheels make such a racket anyway, you hardly hear it. But when it is sitting still, the EMUs had that dig, 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 dig. I know. You all know what I'm talking about. The compressor running. Dig, 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 dig. And that, I think, is lovely, that sound. But you could put that under the board, couldn't you? Yeah. So why DCC? Disadvantages of DCC. Staggering price. I mean, it is ridiculous prices. I have several now, rakes of carriages that need a decoder. You think, what? You got to put a decoder in and turn the lights on. The underground stock, that was totally annoying. So the underground stock has a motor car at each end, and because they're so tiny, they have a motor in each end. Now, if you split those things in half, so 2-car unit, they run as individual trains, and you can program each end as a different train. That's stupid, because now you need 2 chips, one for each end of the train. And all you do is you put them into the carriages and program them to the same number, and now they go the same direction and at the same speed. So they're matched. So why can't you just use one and run the cables through from car 2 to 3, and there's no electrical connection between 2 and 3? On my layout, I've had a problem with that. So when the first bit gets into the section, the computer says, oh, there's a train. Oh, yes, he wants it to slow down. So the front half starts slowing down, and the back half's going, oh, no, you don't. Oh, no, you don't. Oh, no, you don't. And shoves it. And you can have the front half skidding along the tracks being pushed by the back. There is an advantage to that, surprisingly, where it goes over a stutter, one bit will pull the other. But why can't you use one chip? Then what happens is if one chip gets into a section, it would work on both. I'm so annoyed by that because those chips are expensive. Sound chips. I mean, you want how much? Then you've got to have the whole DCC controllers. You've got to have the point motors are all DCC. Oh, come on, just stop. But I've done it. Now, why did I do it? It's reliable. It works first time, every time. Well, mostly. You can stop trains where you want them to, however long they are. So with DC, goes over a little stop, it stops there. DCC, you can tell the programming run on to the end of the platform with you. Now, it takes time to set up, but you can't really sensibly do that with DC. Now, those DCC people going, ha, 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 and then you'll have the argument from the DC, I've been doing that for years. And no, you haven't. Stop it. DC has its limitations. You can get really clever with it, but it does have its limitations. And with DCC, those limitations really are only there because you don't know how to use it. So DCC, much more capable, much more expensive. I think 2 things. I said this the other day in a video. There's a couple of things that really are barriers. So one is the cost, and I've already talked about that. It's prohibitive. Have you seen the price of some of these new locomotives coming out? I know Sam's Trains is always going, what? Yeah, well, hey, that is the price of things today. But so the first thing is the cost. The second thing is many of us have grown up, and I will say, gentlemen of a certain age. I know there's lots of, I don't know, younger people coming in that can't afford. I love a lady friend of mine has a train set, and she's, I love your channel. Well, I know it's not just a guy thing, but having said that, men of a certain age have figured out how to work with DC. We used to tinker with cars. We knew when you pushed a button, a solenoid went in, and we figured all that stuff out. So it's all in here, all very straight line, all very logical. And DCC is a step beyond our brains. Now, I have an electronic engineering background, so it's not beyond my brain, but I get how it can be. Once you introduce computer programming, I was at work today, and the technician said, aha, we've got a wire from here to there, therefore we must have. And I said, just because you got a wire there doesn't mean there's the right kind of... Well, I can measure the volts. It doesn't matter. If the thing at one end is looking for a digital signal and it's not getting it, so now you've got that to worry about. So I do understand that the electronics, the how does it work? Why can't I do this? Why can't I... Yeah. All of that stuff is it's a little, we're scared of it. We don't know how it works. I am struggling with some CVs on some locomotives. There's no good books out there. What happens is this stuff is written by engineers who think they're clever. Well, they are, but they don't know how to put stuff into words. So there's a word salad for you. There are some advantages of DCC, certainly, and the advantages are significantly more than the drawbacks of going with DCC, or I wouldn't have done it. The bigger the layout gets, the more DCC becomes appropriate. Why do I say that? Because then you're more likely to have a whole bunch of trains, and you want a whole bunch of trains running at the same time. I've had as many as 5 or 6 running at the same time, quite sensibly on the layout. You can have them back to back on the layout there. So I sometimes have trains running, and it looks like they're running in 2 different directions. There might be 3 trains all running at similar speeds, one behind the other, but because it's a folded dog bone, they can just chug along, and so long as you keep an eye on it, they're never going to run into each other. They're just going to keep going. You can do that. And you can slow one of them down or speed one of them up. You can't do that with DC. You can run them on the same track. I used to do it as a kid. You just put them on, you put your finger in front of it to slow one down a bit, or you just lift it up sideways. But you can drive multiple trains on the same track. I remember when Hornby, I'm not talking about the 0-1 system, but when Hornby started really pushing DC, they used to say, just 2 wires. No, it's not just 2 wires. You've seen under my layout, it's ridiculous. The wiring is no different, really. Well, it's very different, but it's no different in the amount of it you're going to need for DC or DCC. In fact, I would go as far as to say for DCC, sometimes you're going to need a bit more. Block detection works DC or DCC. There's no... and I know some people get upset with me when I say block detection. Look, that's what the manufacturers of DCC call it. It's in their books called. I know it's not called that on the real railways. I understand that. We're not running real railways. I know with signalling, for example, and there's one of our viewers. We're going to call them ours because they watch our channel. One of our viewers is a signalling expert and often gives me a piece of his mind, and I welcome it. But we want to get as real as we can. We want, when the signal is down, we want the train to be stopped at the signal. Now, whether the signal going up makes the train go, or the train going makes the signal go up, we can argue that all day. Of course, in the real world, the train can't go until the signal goes up. But the two things in our world, realistically, are often tied together electrically. We can simulate a great real system, and it's lovely to do that. And when it works, it's great. But just so long as it looks right, the casual viewer doesn't know what electronic nonsense I've got up to in the background. Do they? But all of that too, you could do that DC or DCC. I will say though, with DCC, because you are sending a pulse down the track to tell the train what to do, you can use that same pulse to make the signal do what you want it to do too. So yeah, signaling, I don't really see an advantage with DCC, except that the control circuits that we use with the computers are more appropriate. So I use train controller. I use silver and with adaptations. It's expensive. And isn't it JMRI? I don't know what they call the wretched thing. There's a free version that runs on one of the shareware programs. Lovely. But all of that has signaling and whatever built in. The biggest thing for me is routes. So I can tell a train, I can see where you are and I know where you want to be. I want you to go there. I don't have to worry about changing all the points along the way. The system will do that for me. Oh, there's no fun in that. Oh, yes, there is. Our whole hobby is watching trains go by, isn't it? I can't drive, coming in from a long day's work, I can't sit there driving 4 trains at the same time without being an octopus. But I can run 3 with a computer and then drive 1. And that's much more fun. You've got to move in and out. So DCC or DC? I'm a DCC guy. I understand it. I understand DC. I love it. I have both. The big layout is DCC, but on that big layout, there are a couple of shuttles. One of them isn't on the layout at all right now. It's actually under my feet in this room. But the mine circuit, that was DC. And so is the tram circuit. The tram circuit, you haven't seen the trams move because they don't. But it's DC, and DC wasn't the reason it stopped working. Plaster was. I used plaster. I've done some really stupid things, but that was one of the big ones. But it will eventually. I know how to make shuttles work. And so that circuit is DC. Why make it more complicated? You could run it DCC, but why? So DCC versus DC. Boiling it down to one sentence or two. DC, cheap, works, understandable. DCC, complex, expensive, a mind game, but when you get it working, wonderful, and all kinds of features that add on. I don't know if that helps anybody. I really hope it does. And I hope you've enjoyed watching some of the trains go by. It's just the way it is. The chips are, yeah, those are expensive too, and I keep blowing them up. I do stupid things with them. I wonder if it'll do this. Digitracks actually have a no questions asked warranty. I'm honest, and I just can't bring myself. I've got 2 or 3 broken ones, but I know why they're broken, and I'm not sending them back and saying, oh, it went bang, can you replace it? They would, but I think that's wrong. You know, I know what I was up to, and I knew what the risks were when I took them. So actually, Night Mail, you remember Night Mail? I put a new chip in that, and it fried. That really wasn't my fault, but it isn't Digitrack's fault either. I had to make a modification, which I haven't talked about on the channel, to that locomotive to stop that happening. We'll talk about that eventually. But no, it's a lifetime money-back guarantee thing, and I'm paying for it, I suppose. But no, you can't take a company to the cleaners like that. I like DCC, I like DC, I like clockwork. And yes, in fact, there's a couple of push-along trains up here, look. See, this one's from India. Look at that. They make a really shiny, love the lacquer on it. Gorgeous. There's another one over there somewhere. I should turn this camera around. Hold on, I'll do that for you. Look, there's another one here. This one's much cheaper. This was made, kids one with 4 different color wheels. Yeah, I mean, I like trains. I didn't say they have to cost $200 or $300 or pounds before I like them. No, I like trains. I like the real thing. I like toys. I like models. Yeah. Anyway, I hope this helps somebody. Just a little chit chat. Me sitting in the video studio. You haven't seen content from out of here, I don't think. It's over on one of my other channels. Having a think about DCC and DC. I'm flying a lot right now, and I'm heading to England a couple of times, flying in and out of London. So I usually leave on Sunday night, get there Monday morning, there all day, Monday, leave Tuesday. So I'm gone a total of 48 hours and I've had a day in London. So I get fish and chips or pie, usually a steak and kidney pie somewhere, and come back again. So that's what I'm up to these days. It'll be a bit sporadic for a couple of weeks with video because of that, but look forward to seeing you again soon. You can click up here for a subscription, of course, and if you want to see another video, click on the screen here. Thanks now. See you next time.